Coulter Wade rides into a land he's just bought, only to discover it already claimed by the Tawina people. As gold and greed threaten them all, will he fight with them or against them? Before we get into the story, comment below where. In the world you are watching from today? The morning sun cast long shadows across Stonehook Valley as Coulter Wade rode his chestnut stallion along the ridge. He'd been riding since dawn, eager to see his new purchase, 2,000 acres of prime, land with its own spring game trails and a beauty that took his breath away. What do you think, Thunder? Coulter patted his horse's neck. This is all ours now. At 28, Coulter was already one of the wealthiest cattlemen in the territory. His father had left him a fortune, and he doubled it through smart investments and an unquenchable thirst for more. His boots were custom-made from the finest leather, and his clothes, though dusty from the ride, were of a quality that marked him as a man of means. He dismounted at the edge of a cliff that overlooked the canyon basin. The spring glittered in the distance, a silver ribbon that carved its way through the red earth. This land would make his cattle empire complete. He'd paid a good price for it, but it was worth every penny. Mr. Jenkins said this was the best land in the territory, Coulter said to himself as he pulled out the deed from his saddlebag. The paper felt heavy in his hands, the ink still fresh. And now it's mine. He was about to mount his horse again when he noticed movement in the valley below. He squinted, trying to make out what it was. People. There were people down there moving around what looked like a small settlement of tents and simple structures. What the hell? Coulter muttered. The land agent hadn't mentioned anyone living on the property. He quickly folded the deed and tucked it back into his saddlebag. Come on, Thunder, let's see what's going on. He guided his horse down the narrow trail that led to the valley floor. As he approached the settlement, he could see women grinding corn, men working with tools and children playing. They all stopped when they saw him coming. A young woman stepped forward from the group. She wore a simple dress, her long black hair braided down her back, but it was her eyes that caught Coulter's attention, dark, fierce, and unafraid. "You're trespassing," she said, her voice steady. Coulter's hand instinctively moved toward the gun at his hip, but something in her gaze stopped him. He'd faced down angry men, wild animals, and raging storms, but this woman's quiet dignity made him pause. He dismounted slowly, removed his hat, and looked around at the small community watching him warily. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding," he said. "I just bought this land, 2,000 acres including this canyon basin." The woman didn't flinch. "This land was never for sale. It belongs to the Tawina. It has been ours for generations." An older man with silver hair approached, leaning on a walking stick. "Ayana," he said to the woman, "let me speak with him." Ayana stepped back, but her eyes never left Coulter's face. "I am Red Cloud," the older man said. "I am the grandfather of Ayana and elder of our people. The Tawina have lived in these valleys since before your people came with their papers and laws." Coulter looked from Red Cloud to Ayana, then to the others, about 20 people in all, including several children. They were clearly Ute, one of the native tribes that had been forced onto reservations years ago. The land agent didn't tell me anyone was living here, Coulter said. "Of course he didn't," Red Cloud replied. "To him we are invisible. We returned to our ancestral lands when no one was watching. We have lived quietly, taking only what we need." Coulter's mind raced. He had plans for this land. Cattle, maybe some crops, a proper house on the ridge. But looking at these people, at their simple homes and the children watching him with wide eyes, he felt something shift inside him. "Nobody told me this place was already claimed," he said finally, "and not by ink or coin, by blood." He walked back to his horse and pulled out the deed again. He looked at it for a long moment, thinking of all the plans he'd made, all the money he'd spent. Then he handed the paper to Red Cloud. "Take it," he said. "The land is yours. It always was." Red Cloud didn't reach for the paper. "Your paper means nothing to us. We don't need it to know this land is ours." "Then I'll tear it up," Coulter said, ripping the deed in half and then in quarters. "I'll tell the land office there was a mistake." Ayana stepped forward again. "We don't need your kindness," she told him, her voice sharp as flint. "We just need to be left alone." Her words stung more than Coulter expected. He was used to people thanking him, to being the powerful one, the generous one. But this woman looked at him like she could see right through him, past the expensive clothes and the confident smile, to something he kept hidden even from himself. "I understand," he said, putting his hat back on. "I'll be on my way." But as he mounted his horse, he found himself hesitating. Something about this place, about these people, about her, made him reluctant to leave. "Mind if I make camp up on the ridge tonight?" he asked. "I've been riding since dawn. I could use some rest before heading back." Red Cloud and Ayanna exchanged a look. "One night," Red Cloud said finally. "Then you must go." Coulter nodded and rode back up the trail to the ridge. He made camp by a stand of juniper trees, built a small fire and watched as the sun set over the valley. From his vantage point, he could see the Tawina settlement, the small fires burning, the people moving about their evening tasks. He'd been raised to believe that a man's worth was measured by what he owned. His father, James Wade, had started with nothing and built an empire through sheer force of will and a ruthless determination to acquire more land, more cattle, more money. When he died, he'd left Coulter not just his fortune but his philosophy. Take what you want and never apologize for it. But sitting there, watching the stars appear one by one in the vast sky, Coulter felt strangely empty. He'd just given away 2,000 acres of prime land without a fight. His father would have called him a fool, but something in Ayanna's eyes had made him question everything he'd been taught. The next morning, Coulter woke with the sun. He was packing up his campsite when he heard a cry from the valley. Looking down, he saw a commotion in the settlement. Without thinking, he mounted Thunder and rode down as fast as the trail would allow. When he reached the settlement, he found a group gathered around a young boy who was writhing in pain on a blanket. The boy's leg was bloody, and Ayanna was trying to clean the wound while Red Cloud held the boy still. "What happened?" Coulter asked, pushing through the crowd. "Mountain lion," Red Cloud said grimly. "Little Wolf was hunting rabbits and strayed too far from the camp." Coulter knelt beside the boy. The wound was deep, and the boy's face was pale with shock and pain. "I've dealt with wounds like this before," Coulter said. "I can help." Ayanna looked up at him, her eyes filled with worry and suspicion. "Why would you help us?" "Because he needs it," Coulter said simply. After a moment, she nodded and moved aside to let him examine the wound. "I need clean water, cloth for bandages, and if you have any whiskey or strong spirits, that would help," Coulter said. As the others hurried to gather what he needed, Coulter talked softly to Little Wolf, trying to keep him calm. The boy's eyes were wide with fear, but he stopped struggling. "You're going to be okay," Coulter told him. "You're very brave." Ayanna returned with a clay pot of water and some strips of cloth. "We have no whiskey," she said. "That's all right," Coulter said. He pulled a silver flask from his pocket. "I always carry some." He cleaned the wound carefully, using some of the whiskey to disinfect it. Little Wolf cried out in pain, but Red Cloud held him steady. "The cuts are deep, but the mountain lion didn't get any major blood vessels," Coulter said as he worked. "With proper care, he should heal." "How do you know so much about treating wounds?" Ayanna asked. "When you raise cattle, you learn," Coulter replied. "And I've had my share of run-ins with mountain lions too." After he'd bandaged the wound, Coulter showed Ayanna how to make a poultice from plants he found near the camp. "This will help prevent infection," he explained. "Change the bandages twice a day and keep the wound clean." As the day went on, Coulter found himself staying to help with other tasks around the camp. He mended a broken wagon wheel, helped 2 men repair a leaking roof, and used his rifle to hunt a deer for the community's dinner. That evening, as they all sat around the fire eating venison stew, Red Cloud studied Coulter thoughtfully. "You were leaving this morning," he said. "Why did you stay?" Coulter glanced at Ayanna, who was sitting across the fire feeding Little Wolf small spoonfuls of stew. "I'm not sure," he admitted. "It just felt like the right thing to do." Red Cloud nodded. Sometimes the heart knows what the mind does not yet understand. That night, Coulter made his camp in the valley, near the Tawina settlement. As he lay looking up at the stars, he heard soft footsteps approaching. He sat up to see Ayanna standing a few feet away. "Thank you for helping, Little Wolf," she said quietly. "How is he doing?" Coulter asked. "Sleeping now. The pain has eased." She hesitated, then added, "You surprised me today, Coulter Wade." "I surprised myself," he admitted. She looked at him for a long moment. "My grandfather says even kind men carry the sickness of their world." "Your grandfather is a wise man," Coulter said. "And he's right. I was raised to believe that ownership is power. That's the world I come from. Yet you gave up this land without a fight." Coulter looked at her, at the way the moonlight silvered her hair and softened her features. "When I saw you standing there, unafraid, looking at me like you could see right, through all the gold and the status, it made me question everything I've been taught." Ayana's expression remained guarded, but something in her eyes softened slightly. "One good deed doesn't change who you are, Coulter Wade." "No," he agreed. "But it might be a start." She nodded once, then turned and walked back to the settlement, leaving Coulter with his thoughts. The days turned into a week, and still, Coulter didn't leave. Each morning, he told himself he would ride back to his ranch, back to his life. And each day he found another reason to stay. Little Wolf needed checking on, the fence around the camp needed strengthening to keep out wild pigs, the roof of the meeting hut needed repairs before the rainy season. His foreman, Mac Sullivan, rode into the valley one afternoon, his face creased with worry. "Boss, we've been looking all over for you," Mac said. "When you didn't come back, we thought something had happened." "I'm fine, Mac," Coulter assured him. "Just taking some time." Mac looked around at the Tawina settlement, at Coulter's simple campsite. "What about the new land? Jenkins at the land office said you bought a huge tract out here." "There was a misunderstanding," Coulter said. "The land wasn't for sale." Mac's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "Jenkins had all the papers in order. The papers were wrong. This land belongs to the Tawina people." "Indians?" Mac's hand drifted to his gun. "Boss, you know the law. They're supposed to be on the reservation." "The law isn't always right." "Mac," Coulter said, his voice hardening, "these people have a deeper claim to this land than any piece of paper." Mac stared at him in disbelief. "Your father would—" "My father isn't here," Coulter cut him off. "I make my own decisions now." After a long moment, Mac nodded stiffly. "When will you be coming back?" "I'm not sure," Coulter said. "Tell everyone at the ranch that I'm fine and I'll be back when I'm ready." After Mac left, Coulter noticed Ayana watching him from near the spring where she was filling water jugs. "Your man thinks you've lost your mind," she said as he approached. "Maybe I have," Coulter replied with a small smile. She studied him, her dark eyes thoughtful. "Why are you really staying, Coulter Wade? Is it guilt? Pity?" "No," he said honestly. "It's not that. I'm staying because I found something here I didn't know I lost." "And what is that?" Coulter looked around at the valley, at the simple life these people led, at the way they worked together and cared for each other. "A sense of what really matters," he said, finally. "My whole life I've been chasing more land, more cattle, more money. But here I see people who have so little in terms of possessions, yet so much in terms of community and purpose." Hayana's expression softened slightly. "You speak like a man who is lost." "Maybe I am," Coulter admitted. "Or maybe I'm just beginning to find my way." That night, for the first time, Ayana brought Coulter a bowl of stew and sat beside his fire to eat her own meal. "Little Wolf asked about you today," she said. "He wants to know when you'll teach him to ride like you do." Coulter smiled. "Anytime he's ready. Once his leg heals, of course." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, watching the flames dance. "Your people," Coulter said finally. "How did you end up here? I thought all the Ute were on reservations now." Ayana's face darkened. "We were. The conditions there were unbearable. Disease, hunger, despair. My parents died there." She was quiet for a moment, lost in painful memories. 2 years ago, Red Cloud led a small group of us back to our ancestral lands. We've lived quietly, hidden from the soldiers and surveyors, until you came." "I'm sorry," Coulter said, "for what my people have done to yours." "Your sorrow doesn't change anything," Ayana said, but her voice was more tired than angry. "No," Coulter agreed, "but actions might. What if I could help protect this land for you, make it legally yours so no one else could claim it?" Ayana looked at him skeptically. "How?" I have money, influence. I could find a way. She shook her head. The government has broken every promise it ever made to my people. Why would they listen now? They might not, Coulter admitted, but I have to try. For the first time, Ayanna smiled at him, a small, cautious smile that transformed her face and made Coulter's heart skip a beat. You are a strange man, Coulter Wade, she said. I'm starting to think that might be a good thing, he replied, as he... The fire burned low and the stars wheeled overhead. They talked about their childhoods, their beliefs, their hopes. And though they came from worlds as different as the earth and sky, Coulter felt a connection to Ayanna that he'd never experienced with anyone before. When she finally rose to return to her tent, she paused and looked back at him. Good night. Coulter Wade. Good night, Ayanna, he replied, watching her walk away, knowing that somehow in just a few short days, his life had changed forever. 2 weeks had passed since Coulter Wade first rode into Stonehook Valley. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of pine and sage as he worked alongside 2 Tawina men, strengthening the fence that would keep wild animals away from the settlement. Little Wolf sat nearby, his injured leg stretched out before him, watching Coulter with admiration. The boy had recovered well and now followed Coulter everywhere, asking endless questions about horses, cattle, and life beyond the valley. When can I ride Thunder? Little Wolf asked for the 10th time that day. Coulter smiled, wiping sweat from his brow. Soon, your leg is healing well, but we need to make sure it's strong enough first. I am strong, Little Wolf insisted, trying to stand up to prove his point. He winced but managed to stay on his feet. I see that, Coulter said, impressed. Maybe in a few days, we can start with a gentle ride around the camp. Little Wolf beamed and hobbled over to where Thunder was grazing. The horse had grown used to the boy's attention and lowered his head to be petted. From across the settlement, Ayanna watched the interaction, a small smile playing on her lips. She'd been wary of Coulter at first, expecting him to leave once. The novelty of playing hero wore off, but day after day he stayed, working harder than anyone, asking for nothing in return. Red Cloud approached her, following her gaze. How you watch the white man a great deal, he observed. Ayanna's smile faded. I'm making sure he doesn't cause trouble. Red Cloud's weathered face crinkled with amusement. Is that what you're doing? She turned to her grandfather, frowning. What are you suggesting? Only that the heart sees what it wishes to see, Red Cloud said. Be careful, my child. Even kind men carry the sickness of their world. You've said that before, Ayanna reminded him. But he's different. He gave up his claim to our land. He's helping us. For now, Red Cloud said. But his people's ways are deep in his blood. When the time comes to choose between his world and ours, what will he do? Ayanna had no answer. She watched as Coulter lifted a heavy post into place, his strong arms straining against his shirt. He caught her looking and smiled, a warm, genuine smile that made her heart beat faster. I need to check the traps, she said abruptly, turning away from her grandfather's knowing gaze. Later that afternoon, as the sun began its descent behind the mountains, Coulter found Ayanna by the spring. She was filling water jugs, her movements quick and efficient. Need some help? He offered. She glanced up. I've been doing this since I was a child. I don't doubt it, Coulter said, leaning against a nearby boulder. But sometimes it's nice to have help, even when you don't need it. Ayanna straightened, studying him. Why are you still here, Coulter? It's been 2 weeks. Do you want me to leave? He asked. She hesitated, then shook her head slowly. No, but I don't understand you. Coulter smiled. That makes 2 of us. He picked up one of the filled water jugs. Let me carry this back for you. As they walked back to the settlement, Coulter asked, Will you show me more of the valley tomorrow? I'd like to see the places that are special to your people. Ayanna considered him for a moment, then nodded. There's a sacred place not far from here. A cave with paintings made by my ancestors hundreds of years ago. I could show you. I'd like that, Coulter said. The next morning they set out on horseback. Coulter rode Thunder, and Ayanna rode a sturdy brown mare. They followed a narrow trail that wound through stands of juniper and pine, climbing higher into the hills that surrounded the valley. My father used to bring me here when I was little, Ayanna said as they rode, before the soldiers came and forced us onto the reservation. You remember that day? Coulter asked quietly. Ayana's face hardened. I was 7. They came at dawn, many men with guns. We had little time to gather our belongings. Some fought back and were killed. The rest of us were marched for days to a place far from here, where the soil was poor and the water scarce. Coulter felt a weight of shame for what his people had done. I'm sorry. You keep saying that, Ayana said, but you weren't there. No, but I benefited from it, Coulter admitted. The land my father claimed that I inherited, it was once someone else's home. They rode in silence for a while, each lost in thought. Here, Ayana said finally, dismounting near a rocky outcropping. The cave is just ahead. They tied their horses to a tree and continued on foot. The entrance to the cave was partly hidden by brush, but Ayana knew exactly where to go. Inside, the temperature dropped and the light dimmed. Ayana took a small torch from her bag and lit it. This way, she said, leading him deeper into the cave. The walls opened up into a small chamber, and in the flickering torchlight, Coulter saw the paintings, red, ochre, and black figures of people, animals, and symbols he didn't understand. These were made by my ancestors, Ayana said, her voice soft with reverence. They tell the story of our people, our connection to this land. Coulter moved closer to the wall, studying the figures. There were hunters chasing deer, people dancing. In a circle, a mountain lion watching from above. It's beautiful, he said sincerely. This is why we came back, Ayana explained. On the reservation, our children were forgetting who they were, where they came from. Here we can teach them our ways, our stories. Coulter turned to her, seeing the pride and determination in her face. I want to help you protect this, he said. All of it. The land, the cave, your way of life. Ayana's eyes searched his. Why? Because it matters, he said simply. Because it's right. For a long moment they stood there in the flickering torchlight, something unspoken passing between them. Then Ayana looked away. We should go back, she said. There's a storm coming. As they rode back to the settlement, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. They had just reached the valley floor when the rain began, fat drops that quickly turned into a downpour. They urged their horses to a gallop, but they were both soaked by the time they reached the camp. The Tawina had moved most of their activities into the large meeting hut. Red Cloud motioned for Coulter and Ayana to join them. The spirits send rain to test us, Red Cloud said, handing them blankets to dry off, and to wash away the old so the new can grow. That evening, as rain drummed on the roof of the hut, the Tawina gathered around the central fire. An older woman began to sing, her voice rising and falling in a melody that seemed to Coulter both mournful and hopeful. Others joined in, and soon the hut was filled with song. What are they singing about? Coulter whispered to Ayana, who sat beside him. It's a story about a great flood long ago, she explained, how our ancestors survived by coming together, by helping each other. As the singing continued, Little Wolf limped over and sat next to Coulter. Without a word, the boy leaned against him, tired from the day's activities. Coulter put his arm around the child's shoulders, feeling a surge of protectiveness. Across the fire, Red Cloud watched the scene with thoughtful eyes. Later, when most of the others had gone to sleep, he approached Coulter. Walk with me, the elder said. Despite the late hour and the continuing rain, Coulter followed Red Cloud outside. They stood under the overhang of the hut's roof, watching. The rain fall in the moonlight. My granddaughter has a strong spirit, Red Cloud said. But her heart is gentle. She has known much sorrow. She's remarkable, Coulter agreed. Red Cloud turned to look at him directly. What are your intentions, Coulter Wade? The question caught Coulter off guard. I want to help your people. And what of Ayana? Coulter felt his face grow warm. I care for her, he admitted, more than I expected to. Our worlds are very different, Red Cloud said. Can a man who was raised to take truly learn to give? Can a heart divided between two worlds ever find peace? I don't know, Coulter said honestly, but I want to try. Red Cloud studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Perhaps that is all any of us can do. Try to be better than what we were taught to be. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the rain having washed the world clean. Coulter was helping to repair a section of the meeting hut's roof that had leaked during the storm when he heard the sound of approaching horses. Looking up, he saw 3 riders coming down the valley. They wore the uniforms of government agents, men who worked for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Coulter's stomach tightened with anxiety. He climbed down quickly and went to find Ayanna. She was already watching the approaching riders, her face tense. "Who are they?" she asked, though she clearly had her suspicions. "Government agents," Coulter confirmed. "Stay here, let me talk to them." Before she could protest, he strode out to meet the riders. The lead agent, a stern-faced man with a thick mustache, reined in his horse and looked down at Coulter with surprise. Coulter. "Wade?" the agent said. "What are you doing here? We had reports of Indians in this area, but I didn't expect to find you with them." "Agent Bradley," Coulter nodded, recognizing the man from previous dealings. "What brings you to Stonehook Valley?" "We've had reports of unregistered Indians off the reservation," Bradley said, his eyes moving past Coulter to the Tawina settlement. "Looks like the reports were accurate. These people are peaceful," Coulter said. "They're not causing any trouble." "That's not the point," Bradley said impatiently. "The law says all Indians must live on the reservations. You know that, Wade. Now the Tawina had gathered behind Coulter, watching warily. Red Cloud stepped forward to stand beside him. "This is our land," the elder said with quiet dignity. "We have lived here since before your government existed." Bradley's face hardened. "The government has allocated lands for the Ute people. By law, you must return to the reservation." "The reservation is a place of death," Red Cloud said. "Our children sicken there. Our elders die. Our ways are forgotten." "That's not my concern," Bradley said coldly. "My job is to enforce the law." Coulter stepped forward. "And what if I told you this land belongs to me? That these people are here with my permission?" Bradley frowned. "You have a claim to this land." "I bought it from the land office in Green River," Coulter said. It wasn't exactly a lie. He had bought it, even if he'd later decided to give it up. "Let me see the deed," Bradley demanded. Coulter's mind raced. He'd torn up the deed weeks ago. "It's back at my ranch," he improvised, "but I can assure you this land is legally mine." Bradley looked skeptical. "Even if that's true, Wade, you can't just let Indians live wherever they want. Our regulations, they're working for me," Coulter said, the lie coming easier now. "I hired them to help with my cattle operation." "All of them?" Bradley gestured to the women and children. "They're families," Coulter said. "I couldn't very well separate them, could I?" Bradley studied him for a long moment, then looked at the settlement again. "This doesn't look like any cattle operation I've ever seen. We're just getting started," Coulter said smoothly. "The land is perfect for grazing. Good water, sheltered from the worst of the winter storms." One of the other agents leaned over to whisper something to Bradley, who nodded. "We'll be back, Wade," Bradley said finally, "with proper authorities to inspect this cattle operation of yours. If we find you're harboring Indians illegally, there will be serious consequences." "I understand," Coulter said, meeting the agent's gaze steadily. "But as I said, this is my land, and these people work for me. Everything is perfectly legal." Bradley gave him one last suspicious look, then signaled to his men, and they rode back the way they had come. As soon as they were out of sight, Ayanna rushed to Coulter's side. "Why did you lie to them?" she demanded. "Why did you claim the land was yours?" "Because it was the only way to make them leave," Coulter explained. "For now, at least." Red Cloud nodded slowly. "He bought us time, but they will return, and with more men." "Then we need to be ready," Coulter said. "We need to make this place look like a working cattle ranch before they come back." "Why would you do this?" Ayanna asked, searching his face. "You're risking everything, your reputation, your freedom." Coulter looked at her, at the people gathered. Around them, people who had come to mean more to him than he'd ever expected. "Because some things are worth fighting for," he said. That evening, Coulter sat with Red Cloud and the other Tawina elders, making plans. They would build corrals, bring in some of Coulter's cattle, create the appearance of a legitimate ranch operation. "It won't be permanent," Coulter explained, "but it will buy us time to find a better solution." "And what would that be?" "One of," the elders asked. "I'm not sure yet," Coulter admitted, "but there must be a way for your people to live here legally without fear." Later, As Coulter walked back to his campsite, Ayana fell into step beside him. "You didn't have to stand up for us today," she said quietly. "Yes, I did," Coulter replied. "You could have just walked away, gone back to your life, let them take us back to the reservation." Coulter stopped and turned to face her. "Is that what you think of me? That I would abandon you?" In the moonlight, Ayana's face was a study in conflicting emotions. "I don't know what to think anymore. When you first came here, I saw you as just another white man coming to take what wasn't his. Now, Coulter prompted when she didn't continue. "Now I see someone trying to be more than what he was raised to be," she said softly. "Someone who gave us everything instead of taking it away." Coulter's heart pounded in his chest. "Ayana, But she shook her head, cutting him off. "Don't say anything, not yet. There's still so much standing between us." "Like what?" "Your world, my world. The agents who will come back, the law that says my people don't belong on our own land," she sighed. "It's too much, Coulter." "Maybe," he conceded. "But we'll face it together." She looked at him for a long moment, then reached out and touched his hand briefly. "Good night," Coulter weighed. "Good night, Ayana," he replied, watching her walk away, feeling as though she'd taken a piece of his heart with her. The next few days were a flurry of activity. Coulter rode back to his ranch to bring Mac and a few trusted hands into his confidence. They drove a small herd of cattle into Stonehook Valley and built corrals and a simple bunkhouse. Mac thought Coulter had lost his mind, but he was loyal and kept his opinions to himself. "The men are talking," Mac warned as they worked. "They don't understand why you're spending so much time out here. There are rumors." "Let them talk," Coulter said. "What matters is that we make this look convincing when the agents return." "And after that," Mac asked, "what's your plan, boss?" Coulter looked across the valley to where Ayana was teaching some of the younger children. Her face animated as she told them a story. "I'm working on it," he said. A week after the agent's visit, Coulter rode to Green River to speak with a lawyer he knew. The man was skeptical, but agreed to look into whether there was any legal way for the Taweena to remain on their ancestral lands. "It won't be easy," the lawyer warned. "The law is pretty clear about Indians and reservations." "There must be exceptions," Coulter insisted. "Treaties, special circumstances, something." "I'll see what I can find," the lawyer promised, "but don't get your hopes up." As Coulter was leaving the lawyer's office, he ran into Jenkins, the land agent who had sold him Stonehook Valley. "Wade!" Jenkins exclaimed. "Just the man I wanted to see. I heard there was some trouble with that land I sold you." "No trouble," Coulter said cautiously. "Everything's fine." Jenkins lowered his voice. "That's not what I heard. Word is you've got Indians living out there. Government's taking an interest." Coulter's jaw tightened. "My business is my own, Jenkins." Sure, Jenkins said, raising his hands placatingly. "Just thought you might want to know. There are other interested parties. If you're looking to sell, I could arrange a good price." "I'm not selling," Coulter said firmly. "Well, if you change your mind." Jenkins left the offer hanging. As Coulter rode back to Stonehook Valley, he mulled over Jenkins' words. Other interested parties. Who else wanted the land? And why? He was still pondering this when he crested the ridge overlooking the valley. The sight that greeted him made his blood run cold. 3 wagons were parked near the Taweena settlement, and men in uniform were moving among the tents. Coulter spurred Thunder into a gallop, racing down the trail. As he approached, he saw Bradley directing his men as they searched the settlement. The Taweena stood together in a group, watched over by armed guards. "Bradley!" Coulter shouted as he dismounted. "What is the meaning of this?" The agent turned, his face smug. "Wade, good of you to join us. We're conducting an official inspection of your cattle operation." Coulter looked around frantically for Ayana and spotted her standing next to Red Cloud, her face tight with anger and fear, as "You can see," Bradley continued, "we've found evidence that this is in fact an illegal Indian settlement, not a cattle ranch. These people will be escorted back to the reservation where they belong." "You have no right," Coulter began, but Bradley cut him off. "I have every right, and more importantly, I have orders." He pulled a paper from his pocket. "Signed by the governor himself. These Indians are to be returned to the reservation immediately." Coulter looked at Ayana, at the despair in her eyes, and knew he had to do something, anything, to stop this from happening. "Wait!" he said desperately. "There's something you should know about this land." "Wait," Coulter said desperately to Agent Bradley. "There's something you should know about this land." Bradley crossed his arms, impatient. "And what might that be, Wade?" Coulter's mind raced. He needed something convincing, something that would make Bradley and his men leave without the Tawina. "The land is worthless," he blurted out. Bradley's eyebrows rose. "Worthless? That's not what the land office records show. 2,000 acres of prime grazing land with its own water source." "That's what they told me too," Coulter said, warming to his lie. "But it's not true. The spring runs dry most of the year. The soil is poor. It's overgrazed and barely supports the few cattle I've brought in." Bradley looked skeptical. "Is that so? Then why are you fighting so hard to keep these Indians here?" "Because they're the only ones willing to work this godforsaken piece of land," Coulter said. "They don't complain, they know how to make do with little, and they work hard." Ayanna and Red Cloud exchanged glances, catching on to Coulter's strategy. "It's true," Red Cloud stepped forward. "The land is not what it once was. The game is scarce, the water bitter, but it is still better than the reservation." Bradley frowned, looking around the valley with new eyes. "If this land is so worthless, why did you pay good money for it, Wade?" "Because I was a fool," Coulter said bitterly. "I trusted Jenkins at the land office. He showed me maps, told me stories about how rich the valley was, but he lied. By the time I realized the truth, it was too late." One of Bradley's men approached and whispered something in his ear. Bradley nodded, then turned back to Coulter. "We've searched the settlement. There's no evidence of any illegal activities. And if what you say about the land is true—" He trailed, off thinking. "Look," Coulter pressed his advantage. "I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm just trying to make the best of a bad situation. These people work for me. They help me run what little cattle I can graze here, and in return I give them a place to live." Bradley studied Coulter's face, searching for deceit. "You're a wealthy man, Wade. You could buy better land elsewhere. Why stay here?" "Pride," Coulter said, the words sticking in his throat. "I made a mistake and I'm trying to fix it without losing face." He moved closer to Bradley, lowering his voice. "You know how it is. A man has his reputation to consider." This, at least, Bradley seemed to understand. He nodded slowly. "I suppose there's no harm in letting them stay if they're truly working for you, but I'll need to report this to my superiors." "Of course," Coulter said quickly. "Everything by the book," Bradley signaled to his men. "Pack up, we're leaving." As the agents prepared to depart, Bradley approached Coulter one last time. "I'll be watching you, Wade. If I find out you've been lying to me—" "I understand," Coulter said firmly. Only when the wagons had disappeared over the ridge did the tension. In the camp ease. The Tawina gathered around Coulter, some reaching out to touch his arm in gratitude. Ayanna approached him last, her face a mixture of relief and confusion. "You lied again," she said. "You called our land worthless." "It was the only way to make them leave," Coulter explained. "If they think the land has no value, they won't be interested in it." Red Cloud nodded thoughtfully. "A clever strategy. But it may not work for long." "No," Coulter agreed. "We need a more permanent solution." He looked at Ayanna. "Can we talk privately?" She hesitated, then nodded, leading him away from the others toward the spring. When they were alone, Coulter took a deep breath. "Something's not right. When I was in town, Jenkins mentioned other interested parties who might want to buy this land, and the government seems unusually determined to clear you all out." "What are you thinking?" Ayanna asked. "I'm thinking there's more to this valley than meets the eye," Coulter said. "Something valuable enough that people are willing to go to great lengths to get it." Ayanna's eyes widened with realization. "The cave I showed you. It's not the only one. There's a network of caves throughout these hills. My grandfather once told me that our ancestors found shiny stones in some of them." "Gold?" Coulter whispered. "Perhaps," Ayanna said. "Or silver. My people had no use for such things, but your people—" She didn't need to finish the thought. "If there's gold in these hills, that would explain everything," Coulter said grimly. "Jenkins, the government agents, the sudden interest in land that's been ignored for years. What do we do?" Ayanna asked. Coulter ran a hand through his hair, thinking. "First, we need to confirm our suspicions. Can you show me the other caves?" Ayanna nodded. Tomorrow, it's too late today. They walked back to the settlement in silence, each lost in thought. As they approached, they saw Mac riding into the camp. "Boss," Mac called when he spotted Coulter. "Got news from the ranch." Coulter hurried to meet him. "What is it?" "Jenkins came by with some fancy city slicker," Mac reported. "They were asking all kinds of questions about you and this land. Wanted to know if you were still interested in selling." "What did you tell them?" Coulter asked. "That you weren't selling and they should talk to you directly," Mac said. "But there's more. I overheard them talking when they thought no one was around. They mentioned a company, Westland Mining." Coulter's jaw tightened. "One of the biggest mining operations in the territory." "That's not all," Mac continued. "They said something about a survey that showed promising deposits in this area." Coulter looked at Ayanna. "Looks like we were right." The next morning, Coulter and Ayanna rode out to explore the caves. Ayanna led him to 3 different locations, each hidden away in the hills surrounding the valley. In the second cave, they found what they were looking for, a vein of shimmering gold running through the rock wall. "This is it," Coulter said, running his fingers over the gleaming surface. "This is what they're after." "How much is it worth?" Ayanna asked. "A fortune," Coulter replied. "If this vein runs deep, it could be one of the richest finds in the territory." They rode back to the settlement in grim silence. The discovery confirmed their fears, but offered no easy solutions. "We need to tell the others," Ayanna said as they approached the camp. Red Cloud and the other elders listened solemnly as Coulter explained what they had found. "So this is why they want our land," Red Cloud said when Coulter finished. "Not for cattle or crops, but for the yellow metal that drives white men mad." "Not all white men," Coulter said quietly. Red Cloud studied him. "Perhaps not, but enough to destroy whatever stands in their way." "We need a plan," Coulter said. "If word gets out about the gold, nothing will stop them from taking this land. Not laws, not rights, not human decency." "What do you suggest?" one of the elders asked. Coulter took a deep breath. "We have 2 options. We can fight, file legal claims, appeal to sympathetic newspapers, try to garner public support. It might work, but it would take time, and powerful interests would be against us." "And the second option?" Red Cloud prompted. "We make the land. So undesirable that no one wants it," Coulter said. "We flood the caves, collapse the entrances, make it seem like the gold is inaccessible or already played out." "Destroy the gifts of the Earth Mother?" an elder woman said, horrified. "That would be sacrilege." "Not destroy," Ayanna said quickly. "Hide, protect, until a time when our people can claim what is rightfully ours." The elders debated late into the night. In the end, they decided on a combined approach. Coulter would pursue legal avenues while they worked to hide evidence of the gold. The next day, as Coulter prepared to ride back to Green River to speak with his lawyer, Ayanna approached him. "Be careful," she said, concern evident in her voice. "If the mining company realizes what we're doing, they won't hesitate to stop you." "I'll be fine," Coulter assured her. "I know how to handle men like Jenkins." "These aren't just land agents," Ayanna warned. "Mining companies have hired guns, political influence." Coulter smiled at her concern. "Are you worried about me, Ayanna?" She didn't return his smile. "Yes," she said simply, "I am." The admission hung between them, filled with unspoken meaning. Coulter reached out and gently touched her cheek. "I'll come back," he promised. "Nothing could keep me away." For a moment, they stood close, the air between them charged with emotion. Then Ayanna stepped back. "Go," she said softly. "The sooner you leave, the sooner you can return." Coulter rode into Green River with determination. His first stop was the lawyer's office, where he shared what he'd discovered about the gold. "This changes everything," the lawyer said, excited. "If there's gold on that land, we might be able to file mining claims on behalf of the Tawina. It's a long shot, but—" "No," Coulter interrupted. "I don't want anyone to know about the gold. If word gets out, we'll have a rush of prospectors and claim jumpers descending on the valley. The Tawina would be swept aside," the lawyer frowned. "Then what do you want me to do?" "Find another way," Coulter insisted. "There must be some legal provision, some precedent that would allow the Tawina to remain on their ancestral lands." "I'll keep looking," the lawyer promised. "But without leveraging the gold discovery, our options are limited." Coulter's next stop was the land office. Jenkins looked up in surprise when Coulter walked in. "Wade, just the man I wanted to see. Have an offer for that land of yours." "I'm not selling," Coulter cut him off. Jenkins' friendly demeanor cooled. "That's unfortunate. My client is prepared to be very generous." "Your client?" Coulter said, feigning ignorance. "And who might that be?" "A business associate," Jenkins said vaguely. "Someone who sees potential where others might not." "You mean Westland Mining?" Coulter said flatly. Jenkins's surprise was evident. "How did you—" "It doesn't matter," Coulter said. "What matters is that I know what's going on. You sold me that land knowing there was gold there, planning to buy it back cheap when I discovered how worthless it was for cattle. Now wait." "A minute. Save it," Coulter snapped. "I'm not selling to you, to Westland Mining, or to anyone else. That land stays with me and the people who work it." Jenkins' face hardened. "You're making a mistake, Wade. My client doesn't take rejection." "Well, is that a threat?" Coulter asked quietly. "A friendly warning," Jenkins replied. "There are many ways to acquire land. Purchase is just the most civilized." Coulter leaned forward, his voice low and dangerous. "You listen to me, Jenkins. If anything happens to the people on my land, anything at all, I'll hold you personally responsible, and I won't be civilized about it." He turned and walked out, leaving Jenkins staring after him with a mixture of anger and fear. Coulter's last stop was the newspaper office. The editor, Sam Wilson, was an old friend of his father's and one of the few men in the territory who couldn't be bought. "I need a favor, Sam," Coulter said after explaining the situation. "Careful to omit any mention of gold. You want me to run a story about the government trying to force Indians back to the reservation?" Sam said skeptically. "That's hardly news, Coulter." "No, I want you to hold a story," Coulter clarified. "If you hear anything about gold in Stonehook Valley, sit on it. Don't print a word." Sam's eyebrows shot up. "Gold? Is that what this is about?" "I can't say more," Coulter said, "but I'm asking you as a friend to help me protect those people." Sam studied him for a long moment. "Your father would be spinning in his grave if he knew you were fighting for Indians." "My father was wrong about a lot of things," Coulter said. "I'm trying to be better than he was." Sam nodded slowly. "All right. I'll keep quiet if I hear anything." "But I can't control what other papers print." "I understand," Coulter said. "Thank you, Sam." It was late afternoon when Coulter started the ride back to Stonehook Valley. He pushed Thunder hard, wanting to reach the settlement before dark. As he rode, he mulled over his options. The lawyer hadn't given him much hope for a legal solution. Jenkins and Westland Mining were clearly determined to get the land. Time was running out. He was so lost in thought that he almost missed the movement in the trees ahead. Almost, but not quite. Years of living in dangerous country had honed his instincts. He reined Thunder to a stop and slowly reached for his rifle. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Wade," a voice called from the trees. 3 men emerged onto the trail, all armed. Coulter recognized the one in the middle, a hired gun named Carson who worked for anyone with enough money. "Carson," Coulter said, evenly. "What brings you out this way?" "Business," Carson replied with a thin smile. "Seems you've been causing problems for some important people. Is that so?" Coulter kept his voice calm despite the danger. "And these important people sent you to do what exactly?" "Just to deliver a message," Carson said. "For now." "I'm listening." Carson moved his horse closer. "The message is simple. Sell the land, take the money, and walk away. Otherwise, things might get unpleasant for you and those Indians you're so fond of." Coulter's jaw tightened. "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise," Carson said coldly. "Westland Mining gets what it wants one way or another. You're outnumbered, Wade. Be smart." "Tell your employers I'm not selling," Coulter said firmly. "Not now, not ever." Carson shook his head. "Wrong answer." He nodded to his companions. "Take his gun and his horse. Let's see how eager he is to get back to his Indian friends when he has to walk." Coulter tensed, calculating his odds. 3 against 1, all armed. Not good. "Don't be stupid, Wade," Carson warned, seeing his thoughts. "Even if you got lucky with one of us, the other 2 would cut you down." Slowly, reluctantly, Coulter handed over his rifle. One of Carson's men dismounted and took Thunder's reins. "Start walking," Carson ordered. "And remember what I said. Next time we won't be so gentle." Coulter had no choice. He set off on foot, hearing the men laughing behind him as they rode away with his horse and gun. The valley was still hours away and the sun was setting. It would be a long, cold night. He'd been walking for about an hour when he heard hoofbeats approaching from behind. He moved to the side of the trail, ready to dive into the brush if Carson and his men had returned. But it wasn't Carson. It was Hyana riding her brown mare at a fast trot. She reined in when she saw him. "Coulter!" she exclaimed, dismounting quickly. "What happened? Where's Thunder?" "Some friends of Westland Mining decided to deliver a message," Coulter explained grimly. "They took my horse and rifle to make sure I got the point." Ayana's eyes flashed with anger. "Are you hurt?" "Just my pride," Coulter said with a wry smile. "Come," she said, leading her mare forward. "We'll ride double." As they rode back to the valley, Coulter told Ayana about his meetings in town. "It's not good," he concluded. "The lawyer couldn't find any legal way for the Tawina to stay, and Westland Mining is getting impatient. They sent armed men after you," Ayana said, her voice tight with worry. "What will they do next?" "I don't know," Coulter admitted, "but we need to be prepared for anything." When they reached the settlement, they found it in an uproar. Mac and the other ranch hands were saddling horses, and the Tawina were gathering their possessions. "What's happening?" Coulter asked as he and Ayana dismounted. "Riders coming," Mac said tersely. "A lot of them. We spotted them from the ridge about an hour ago." "Westland Mining?" Coulter guessed. "Maybe," Mac said, "or government agents. Either way, it can't be good." Red Cloud approached, his face grave. "We must leave this place," he said. "There is another valley, further into the mountains. We have used it in times of danger before." "There's no time for everyone to escape," Coulter said, looking at the children and elders. "They'll catch up to us on the trails." "Then what do we do?" Ayana asked. Coulter thought quickly. "Mac, take most of our men and escort the Tawina to this other valley. I'll stay here with a few hands to confront whoever's coming. We'll buy you time." "That's too dangerous," Ayana protested. "You've seen what these men are capable of." "It's our only chance," Coulter insisted. "If it's Carson and his men, I can handle them. If it's government agents, I'll stall them with legal talk." "And if it's both?" Ayana challenged. Coulter had no answer for that. "I'm staying with you," she decided. "Ayana, no. My people need a witness," she said firmly. "Someone who knows our ways, our history. Someone they will listen to." Red Cloud watched this exchange with knowing eyes. "The spirits have brought you together for a reason," he said. "Perhaps this is it." There was no time to argue. The distant sound of hoofbeats was growing louder. Mac and the ranch hands helped the Tawina gather their most important possessions. Mothers hushed crying children, and elders were helped onto horses. "Take the back trail," Red Cloud instructed Mac. "It is harder, but less visible." As the Tawina prepared to leave, Little Wolf limped up to Coulter. The boy's leg had healed. Well, but he still walked with a slight favoring of his right side. "I want to stay and fight," the boy declared. Coulter knelt down to his level. "The bravest warriors protect those who cannot protect themselves," he said. "Your people need you with them." Little Wolf considered this, then nodded solemnly. "I will keep them safe," he promised. "I know you will," Coulter said, squeezing the boy's shoulder. "Now go." As the main group departed through a hidden trail at the back of the valley, Coulter, Ayana, and 3 of Coulter's most trusted hands prepared to meet the approaching riders. They positioned themselves at the entrance to the valley, rifles ready. "Whatever happens," Coulter said to Ayana, "stay behind me." She gave him a look that made it clear she had no intention of doing any such thing. The riders appeared on the ridge, silhouetted against the setting sun. There were at least 15 of them, too many to fight, especially with Coulter's best men escorting the Tawina to safety. As the riders descended into the valley, Coulter recognized Carson at the front, alongside Agent Bradley. Behind them rode Jenkins and a well-dressed man Coulter didn't recognize, probably a representative from Westland Mining. "Quite the welcoming committee," Carson sneered as they reined in a short distance away. "This is private property," Coulter said evenly. "State your business." Bradley moved his horse forward. "We have a warrant to search these premises for unregistered Indians," he said, holding up a paper. "Step aside, Wade." There are no unregistered Indians here, Coulter said. As you can see. Then you won't mind if we have a look around, Bradley said. Actually, I do mind, Coulter replied. Like I said, this is private property. The well-dressed man moved his horse forward. Mr. Wade, he said smoothly, I'm Thomas Westland. I believe my associate, Mr. Jenkins, has spoken to you about our interest in this land. He has, Coulter acknowledged, and I told him I'm not selling. Everyone has a price, Mr. Wade, Westland said. I'm prepared to offer you double what you paid for this land, a generous offer by any standard. Not interested, Coulter said flatly. Westland's polite facade slipped slightly. Mr. Wade, let's be frank. We know there's gold in these hills. You know there's gold. The only question is, who will profit from it? Gold, Bradley interjected, looking sharply at Westland. You didn't mention anything about gold. A recent geological survey, Westland said dismissively. The point is, this land is worth far more than Mr. Wade is using it for. If there's gold, Bradley said slowly, then the land should be properly claimed according to mining law. Which is exactly what my company intends to do, Westland assured him. Once we purchase it from Mr. Wade. Coulter saw his opportunity in the tension between Bradley and Westland. Agent Bradley, he said, I find it interesting that a government official is working so closely with a private mining company. I wonder what your superiors would think about that. Bradley flushed. I'm simply doing my job, enforcing the law. Regarding Indians off the reservation. Are you? Coulter challenged. Or are you helping Westland Mining seize valuable land under false pretenses? Bradley's discomfort was evident. He looked from Coulter to Westland, then back again. Enough of this, Carson cut in impatiently. He drew his gun. Wade, you're outnumbered and outgunned. Tell us where the Indians went, and maybe we'll let you. Walk away from this. Ayanna stepped forward, her head held high. My people have lived on this land since before your grandfathers were born, she said, her voice carrying clearly in the evening air. We will not be driven from it by greed or by guns. Well, well, Carson said with an unpleasant smile. At least we found one Indian, that's a start. Put your gun away, Carson, Coulter said, his own hand moving to his holster. This doesn't have to end in bloodshed. Oh, but I think it does, Carson replied. Some people only understand one language. He cocked his revolver, aiming it at Coulter. Time seemed to slow down. Coulter saw Carson's finger tighten on the trigger. He started to draw his own gun, knowing he'd be too late. Then Ayanna moved, throwing herself forward. No, Coulter shouted, reaching for her. The shot rang out, echoing across the valley. The shot rang out, echoing across the valley. Coulter lunged forward, catching Ayanna as she stumbled. His heart stopped as he felt her weight against him, searching frantically for a wound. But there was no blood, no cry of pain. I'm all right, she whispered, looking as surprised as he was. It wasn't Carson who had fired. It was one of Coulter's ranch hands taking aim at the sky as a warning. In the moment of confusion, Coulter pulled Ayanna behind him, drawing his own gun. Next shot won't be a warning, Coulter's man called out. Carson sneered but hesitated, his gun still trained on. Coulter, you're making a big mistake, Wade. The only mistake was thinking you could intimidate me, Coulter replied, his voice steady despite his racing heart. The moment he'd thought Ayanna was shot had changed something inside him. Fear had been replaced by a cold, clear certainty. Now all of you back away slowly. This isn't over, Westland said, his refined manner giving way to naked anger. That gold belongs to those who can use it, not some backward savages. The gold doesn't belong to anyone, Coulter said. It's part of the land, and the land belongs to those who've cared for it for generations. Bradley, who had been watching the confrontation with growing unease, finally spoke up. Mr. Westland, I believe we should withdraw. This situation has become complicated. Complicated? Westland sputtered. It's very simple. There's gold here, and I mean to have it. Not today, Bradley said firmly. My men will not be part of a bloodbath over mining claims. If you want to pursue this legally, through the courts, that's your business. But I won't have government agents involved in a private land dispute at gunpoint. Carson looked to Westland for direction, clearly unhappy with Bradley's intervention. Stand down, Carson, Westland ordered reluctantly. Agent Bradley is right. There are other ways to handle this. Carson holstered his gun with obvious reluctance. "This ain't over, Wade," he growled. "Get off my land," Coulter said, his gun still raised. "All of you." The riders turned their horses and slowly rode back up the trail. Only when they had disappeared over the ridge did Coulter lower his gun, his hands shaking with the aftermath of adrenaline. Ayanna touched his arm. "Are you all right? I thought—" Coulter's voice caught. "When I heard the shot, I thought he'd hit you." "I'm fine," she assured him, "thanks to your quick-thinking man." She nodded to the ranch hand who had fired the warning shot. "They'll be back," the hand warned, "and next time they won't be caught off guard." "I know," Coulter said grimly, "but we've bought some time, that's what matters." As night fell, Coulter sent one of his men to find Mac and the Tawina to let them know it was safe to return, for now. He and Ayanna walked back to the settlement, surveying what remained after the hasty evacuation. "What will we do now?" Ayanna asked as they sat by a small fire outside Coulter's tent. "I don't know," Coulter admitted. "Bradley might have backed. Down today, but Westland won't give up. And now that Bradley knows about the gold, he might decide his duty to the government outweighs any ethical concerns. My people cannot return to the reservation," Ayanna said firmly. "They would rather die fighting for this land." "I know," Coulter said softly, "and I would die alongside them if it came to that." He reached out and took her hand. "But I'd rather find a way for all of us to live." Ayanna looked at their joined hands, then up at his face. "When I first met you, I saw only another white man coming to take what wasn't his. I never imagined—" "Neither did I," Coulter said with a small smile. "I came here looking for land to expand my cattle empire. Instead, I found something far more valuable." She tilted her head. "What?" "A different way to see the world," Coulter said. "A chance to be a better man than my father raised me to be." Their eyes held in the firelight, and Coulter felt something shift between them, a barrier falling away, a distance closing. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward. Their lips met in a gentle kiss, brief but full of promise. When they parted, Ayanna's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Coulter," she whispered, "what future can there be for us? Your world and mine are so different." "They don't have to be," he said. "We can build something new, something that takes the best of both." She shook her head, not in denial but in wonder. "How can you be so sure?" "Because some things are worth fighting for," he said simply. "This land, your people, us." Later that night, Mac returned with the Tawina. Red Cloud listened gravely, as Coulter recounted the confrontation with Westland and Carson. "So now they know for certain there is gold," the elder said when Coulter finished. "Yes," Coulter admitted, "and they won't stop until they get it." "Unless they believe it's gone?" Red Cloud said thoughtfully. "Oh, what do you mean?" Coulter asked. "The caves where the gold is found," Red Cloud explained. "They could be sealed, hidden. If Westland believes the gold is inaccessible, he might give up," Coulter finished, catching on. "It's worth a try, but we'd need to act quickly before they return." At dawn, Coulter, Mac, and several of the Tawina men rode out to the caves. With dynamite from Coulter's ranch and the natural knowledge of the Tawina, they worked to collapse the entrances to the caves where gold had been found. "It feels wrong," Coulter admitted to Mac as they set the charges at the largest cave. "Destroying something so valuable." "Not destroying," Ayanna corrected, having insisted on coming with them. "Protecting. The gold will still be here, beneath the earth where it belongs. When the time is right, when it's safe, it can be found again." As they rode back to the settlement, Coulter felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Without easy access to the gold, Westland might lose interest in the land. But a more permanent solution was still needed to protect the Tawina. That evening, an unexpected visitor arrived at the camp, Sam Wilson, the newspaper editor from Green River. "Sam!" Coulter greeted him with surprise. "What brings you out here?" "News travels fast," Sam said, dismounting. "Word is that Westland Mining is trying to force you off your land, and that you're harboring Indians." Coulter tensed. "And you came to write a story about it." "I came to help," Sam corrected him. "My paper may be small, but people listen to it. If Westland and the government are trying to steal land for gold, the public deserves to know." "It's more complicated than that," Coulter said. The Tawina have a rightful claim to this land, but the law doesn't recognize it. Then let's change the law, Sam said simply. Or at least, let's create enough public pressure that the government has to acknowledge their claim. Hope, small but persistent, began to grow in Coulter's heart. With Sam's newspaper on their side, they might have a chance. The next day, Sam interviewed Red Cloud, Ayana, and other members of the Tawina, recording their stories of displacement, survival, and their deep connection to Stone Hook Valley. He examined the sealed cave entrances and took notes on the confrontation with Westland and Carson. "This is powerful stuff," Sam told Coulter as he prepared to ride back to town. "I'll run the story in tomorrow's edition. By next week, everyone in the territory will know what's happening here." "Will it be enough?" Coulter asked. "It's a start," Sam said. "Public opinion can be a powerful force, and I have friends at newspapers in Denver and Salt Lake City who might pick up the story." After Sam left, Coulter found Ayana by the spring, lost in thought. "What's troubling you?" he asked, sitting beside her on a flat rock. "I'm afraid to hope," she admitted. "My people have been promised justice before, only to have those promises broken." "This time is different," Coulter assured her. "This time, you have me." She smiled, but her eyes remained worried. "And what if that's not enough?" Before Coulter could answer, a shout came from the edge of the camp. One of the Tawina men was pointing to the ridge, where a lone rider was approaching. Coulter grabbed his rifle and hurried to meet the rider, with Ayana close behind. As the figure came closer, Coulter recognized Agent Bradley. "He's alone," Coulter noted, puzzled. Bradley reined in his horse at the edge of the settlement. "I need to speak with you, Wade," he called, "and with the Indian woman." "Her name is Ayana," Coulter said, not lowering his rifle. "What do you want?" "Information," Bradley said, "and to deliver a warning." Cautiously, Coulter allowed Bradley to dismount and join them by the fire pit at the center of the camp. The agent looked tired, his usual crisp appearance rumpled from hard riding. "Westland is planning to bring in more men," Bradley said without preamble. "A lot more. He's hiring every gun he can find in a 100-mile radius." "Why are you telling us this?" Ayana asked suspiciously. Bradley sighed, removing his hat and running a hand through his thinning hair. "Because what happened yesterday crossed a line. I'm a government agent, not a hired thug for mining companies." "That didn't seem to bother you before," Coulter pointed out. "There are arrangements," Bradley admitted reluctantly. "Westland makes generous contributions to certain officials. In return, we're expected to help with issues like unregistered Indians." He looked uncomfortable. "But not like this. Not gunfights and land grabs." "So what now?" Coulter asked. "I've wired my superiors in Washington," Bradley said. "Explained the situation, asked for clear instructions on how to proceed." "And?" Ayana prompted. "And nothing yet," Bradley admitted. "These things take time. But until I receive orders, I've told my men to stand down. We won't be helping Westland." "That won't stop him," Coulter said grimly. "No," Bradley agreed. "It won't. That's why I came to warn you. He's planning to move. In 3 days." 3 days, Coulter repeated. "Not much time." "There's something else," Bradley said, hesitating. "The governor is coming through Green River next week. He's campaigning for re-election. If you could get your case before him." Coulter and Ayana exchanged a look of cautious hope. The governor had the authority to make exceptions to reservation policies, to grant special land rights. "Thank you for the warning," Coulter said to Bradley. "We won't forget it." After Bradley left, Coulter gathered Red Cloud and the other Tawina leaders to share the news. "We have 3 days before Westland attacks," he told them, "and a chance to appeal to the governor next week. If we can hold out that long, we will fight," Red Cloud said simply, "for our land, for our future." "We'll need more men," Mac pointed out. "Westland's bringing an army." "I'll ride to my ranch tonight," Coulter decided. "Bring back every loyal hand and I'll send word to other ranchers who owe me favors." That night, as Coulter prepared to leave, Ayana came to say goodbye. They stood in the moonlight, both aware that they might never see each other again if things went wrong. "Be careful," she said, touching his face gently. "Westland might have men watching the trails." "I will," he promised, "and I'll be back as soon as I can." She nodded, then reached into a small pouch at her waist. "Take this," she said, pressing something into his hand. It was a small, polished stone from the spring bed, shaped remarkably like a heart. "My father gave this to my mother when they pledged themselves to each other," she explained. "It will protect you on your journey." Coulter closed his fingers around the stone, feeling its smooth contours. "I'll treasure it," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "And I'll return it to you when this is over." "See that you do," she said, with a small smile that didn't hide the worry in her eyes. Coulter's journey to his ranch was swift and uneventful. When he arrived, he called together all his men, explaining the situation and asking for volunteers. To his surprise and gratitude, every hand stepped forward. "The boss has always been fair to us," one old cowboy said, speaking for them all. "If he says these Indians deserve that land, that's good enough for me." By dawn, Coulter had assembled a force of 30 men, all armed and loyal. Messages had been sent to neighboring ranchers, some of whom would likely send men of their own. As they rode toward Stone Hook Valley, Coulter felt the heart-shaped stone in his pocket, a talisman of hope. They arrived at the valley to find it transformed. Under Red Cloud and Ayana's direction, the Tawina had built defensive positions, using wagons, fallen trees, and the natural contours of the land to create a fortified perimeter. "Impressive," Coulter commented as he dismounted, greeting Ayana with a quick embrace. "My ancestors fought many battles," she reminded him. "We remember how." Over the next 2 days, more allies arrived. A dozen men from neighboring ranches, a few townspeople from Green River who had read Sam's newspaper story and wanted to help, even a small group of Ute warriors from a different band who had heard about the Tawina's stand and come to support their kin. The morning of the third day dawned clear and cool. Lookouts on the ridge reported a large group of riders approaching, at least 50 men, led by Westland and Carson. "This is it," Coulter told the defenders gathered around him. "Remember, we're fighting for more than gold or land. We're fighting for the right of the Tawina to live in peace on their ancestral home." As Westland's force appeared on the ridge, Coulter stepped forward to meet them, Ayana and Red Cloud at his side. Behind them stood their combined forces, ranchers, townspeople, and Tawina warriors, united in defense of the valley. "Last chance, Wade," Westland called down. "Clear out now and no one needs to get hurt." "We're not going anywhere," Coulter replied firmly. "This land belongs to the Tawina people. It always has." "The law says differently," Westland sneered. "Actually," came a new voice, "the law is more complicated than that." All heads turned to see a large group of riders approaching from the east. At their head rode a distinguished man in a fine suit, Governor Richards, accompanied by Agent Bradley and a contingent of official-looking men. "Governor," Westland exclaimed, clearly thrown off balance, "what brings you here?" "Reports of a serious land dispute," the governor replied, his voice carrying across the valley, "and rumors of a mining company preparing to use force against American citizens and native peoples. These Indians are off the reservation illegally," Westland protested, "and there's gold on this land that should be developed for the good of the territory." "Gold?" the governor repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Agent Bradley mentioned nothing about gold in his report." "Because there isn't any accessible gold here anymore," Coulter called out. "The caves have been sealed. Whatever value this land had for mining is gone." Frustration and rage crossed Westland's face. "He's lying. There's gold here and these savages are hiding it." "Mr. Westland," the governor said sternly, "I'd advise you to watch your language and stand down your men. This matter will be settled legally, not with guns." Over the next hour, the governor heard all sides of the dispute. He listened to Red Cloud speak of his people's history in the valley, to Ayana's passionate defense of their right to live there, and to Coulter's account of Westland's threats and intimidation. "This is a complex situation," the governor acknowledged, when everyone had spoken. "But I believe there is a solution that serves justice while respecting the law." He turned to Red Cloud. "I cannot overturn federal policy on Indian reservations, but I can designate specific lands for special purposes." He gestured to one of the men with him, who handed him a document. "This is an executive order creating the Stone Hook Valley Cultural Preserve to be managed jointly by the territory and representatives of the Tawina people." Red Cloud's weathered face showed cautious hope. "And my people can live here, practice our ways. As caretakers of the preserve, yes, the governor confirmed. It's not perfect, but it's the best I can do within my authority. And the gold? Westland demanded. The preserve will be closed to mining operations, the governor said firmly. Whatever resources lie beneath the ground will remain there, undisturbed. Westland's face contorted with anger. This is outrageous. I'll appeal. To Washington! That is your right, the governor agreed calmly. But until any such appeal is decided, my order stands, and I suggest you remove your men from the valley immediately. Westland looked around at the assembled forces, the governor's men, Coulter's, ranch hands, the Tawina warriors, and realized he was outmaneuvered. With a final venomous glare at Coulter, he signaled to Carson and they turned their horses to leave. This isn't over, Westland called back. Yes, Coulter replied, it is. As Westland and his men rode away, a cheer went up from the defenders. The Tawina embraced each other, some weeping with joy and relief. Red Cloud approached the governor and bowed his head in respect. Thank you, the elder said simply, for seeing justice where others saw only profit. Don't thank me yet, the governor cautioned. This preserve will face challenges. There will be those who try to overturn it, to exploit the land despite my order. We will be vigilant, Red Cloud promised, and we have allies now. He glanced at Coulter. Later, as the celebrations continued, Coulter found himself standing on the ridge overlooking the valley. The setting sun painted the landscape in hues of gold and crimson, the spring glittering like a silver ribbon through the red earth. He heard soft footsteps and turned to see Ayana approaching. Without a word, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the heart-shaped stone she had given him. I believe this belongs to you, he said, holding it out. She looked at the stone, then at him. Keep it, she said softly, as a reminder of what we fought for here. I don't need a reminder, Coulter said, taking her hand and placing the stone in her palm. I have something better. He closed her fingers around the stone, then kept her hand in his. I have you, if you'll have me. Ayana's eyes searched. His. It won't be easy, she warned. Our worlds are still very different. They're less different than they were, Coulter said, and what matters isn't where we came from, but where we're going. Together. She smiled then, a full, radiant smile that transformed her face and made Coulter's heart swell with love. Together, she agreed. As the sun sank below the horizon, casting long shadows across Stonehook Valley, Coulter Wade stood with Ayana at the edge of the cliff, their hands intertwined, their hearts full of hope for the future. You cannot live between two worlds forever, Coulter Wade, she said softly, echoing words she had spoken when they first met. Then let me try, he replied, bringing her hand to his lips, as long as you're standing at the place where they meet. And in that moment, as darkness fell and the first stars appeared in the vast sky above, Coulter knew that he had found something far more precious than land or gold or cattle. He had found love, purpose, and the chance to be the man he was always meant to be. The end.